Okay, this free trade deal looks like it's coming down the road. They have announced it, that they have, we have a consensus. And Congress has theoretically 90 days. They'll probably figure out a way to make that, shorter to evaluate this thing. But as they point out over at economyandcrisis.org, this is a great little summary. Free trade means unrestricted, uncontrolled access to our economy. Tariff and duty-free goods made at $4 an hour or less, right? The bottom line, we should call these folks cheap labor conservatives. Number two, American manufacturers cannot remain competitive with these wages, so jobs are shipped overseas. Number three, our trade deficit now averages $600 billion a year for the last 10 years. That's $1.14 million a minute. This country's going into debt because of our trade policies. Number four, for every $1 billion we had in a trade deficit, and keep in mind it's $600 billion a year, for every billion we have in a trade deficit, we lose 9,000 jobs. Just start thinking about that. They just announced the trade deficit from last month. It was something, $54 billion, as I recall. The first year after NAFTA, this is number 8, the first year after NAFTA was introduced to the U.S., our trade deficit with Mexico alone, just Mexico, increased by $17 billion. So 9,000 jobs times $17 billion, 9 times 17. I can't do math in my head that fast. 9 times 7 is 63, right? And then 9 plus 6 is 15, so that'd be 153. So that's 153,000 jobs lost just because of the $17 billion trade deficit in the first year. Number 9, we've lost over 1 million jobs to NAFTA since it was first passed in the 90s during the Clinton administration. And since NAFTA was implemented, 300,000 American family farms have been put out of business. Overall net farm incomes are down 13%. Now, what does NAFTA do? Well, it makes people like Phil Knight billionaires. I mean, Phil Knight, great business model for Nike. He's making shoes in Asia. He doesn't even own the factories. Nike doesn't actually make shoes. Or at least they didn't used to. I'm assuming they still don't. They contract it, with shoe manufacturers in Asia, and then they sell them in the United States. And Nike is basically a marketing company. It's a great business model. Phil Knight, wrote this up as I recall. Maybe I'm mixing him up with Fred Smith of FedEx, but I'm pretty sure that both of them did the same thing. They wrote up a business model as their master's thesis for business school for an MBA, and then did it. And Fred Smith, when he said, "Oh, we'll create FedEx and everything will be centralized in Memphis," and he had this whole thing, his business professor said that's crazy, and did not give him an A. So anyhow, I don't know how Phil Knight worked out, but the bottom line is that Stephon Marbury, he's a retired NBA star who now plays with the Chinese Basketball Association. He has resurrected the Starbury sneaker line. Now, I don't know much about Starbury sneakers except for the fact that, and I think that Stephon Marbury must own this company to have resurrected it. And he's telling sneakerheads that, like Jordans and other brands, this is from a piece by Sam P.K. Collins over at Think Progress, that telling sneakerheads that like Jordans and other brands that come with a price tag of up to $300 for a pair of shoes, his $15 shoes are produced in the same Chinese factories for $5 a pop. So he's just coming out and saying it. Phil Knight's $300 shoes, they cost him $5. My $15 shoes, they cost me $5. Which do you want? In fact, he tweeted out, he said, "You're paying $200 for Jordans and they make them for $5. The shoes are made in China in the same places. Stay calm. We coming." Interesting.